Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this quick video about the full moon in Sagittarius that's happening on July 1st. It's going to be in the sign of Sagittarius. As we said, it'll be opposite the sun in Gemini, and it's in the nakshatra of Purva Ashada. Purva Ashada literally means later victory. It means early victory, excuse me. Ardra Ashada is later victory. So Purva Ashada is ruled by the god called Apus. Apus is the god of the ocean, or the goddess. It's nice to think it's an ocean, or that it's a goddess because it's water, which is a feminine element. And so this goddess of the ocean shows the power of Sagittarius that's very devotional. The first nakshatra in Sagittarius is Mula, which means root, where we uproot difficulty and plant seeds that hopefully become a new course in life. So the next nakshatra, Purva Ashada, is where we water those seeds. And we water those seeds with care and love and devotion. And actually, whatever we're devoted to is what's growing. This is happening all the time, by the way. This is just a process of creation and transformation. Scorpio is a sign that comes before Sagittarius, and it shows our fears. And what we do in response to our fears is we uproot something and plant something else there, which is related to Mula. Then we water whatever we've planted with the seeds of our devotion, with the waters of our devotion. And that guarantees the result, which is the next nakshatra. Now, it's easy to say that this is something that's going to be good, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're crippled by fear, so we uproot our fear and we replace it with a belief system, which is Sagittarius. And the belief system might be something like, blame all the Arabs, or blame the Jews. That's all the problems in the world. Blame that, it could be something that's not very enlightened. And so those are the seeds that get planted, and then we water those seeds. We become very devoted to that fanatical perspective, and then that produces the result. Of course, we have an option, we have another choice. So Sagittarius is our principles and philosophies. Never get into this good-bad thinking. Every sign has a power and a difficulty. It has a strength and a weakness. Fanaticism is very related to Sagittarius. And by the way, I'm pointing this out because it's not just that watering the seeds of truth that sounds so devotional and so beautiful. It's also a fanatical nakshatra. It can have a lot of fanaticism. The symbol is also a winnowing basket where you kind of sift through things. So it also shows the need to not be fanatical and to use our discrimination even in concert with our devotion. There's also the symbol of the elephant tusk, which has a quality of Lord Ganesha. Frankly, I think too much Lord Ganesha energy is put on this nakshatra often. There's really not a direct relationship to Lord Ganesha. I mean, the deity is Apus of the ocean, and the tusk is a symbol. And, it definitely has a quality of obstacle, though, I guess you could say, and not to create obstacles out of a lack of thinking, because the symbol of the winnowing basket I find to be more important here, which is to use discrimination and not just blind faith. So blind faith is good. Having faith in good teachings is necessary. You need to have faith. But when it's blind faith, it's not so good. And again, this is why Sagittarius is opposite Gemini, where we need to use our discrimination in concert with our devotion. Now, the reason I say this could be difficult is because we have this full moon is opposite Sun Mars in Ardra Nakshatra. Now, and Mars is very combust. Sun Mars opposite Ardra could be quite difficult that day, especially on an explosive full moon. And so we could have some things, happening on June 30th, July 1st. There could be some explosive things happening, particularly on June 30th with the moon in Mula. If the moon goes through Mula, it could be kind of an explosive day with the Sun and Mars both in Ardra. Now, another thing that's important on this full moon is we have this exchange, what's called Parivartana Yoga, between Jupiter and the moon. The moon is in Jupiter's sign, Jupiter's in the moon's sign. Jupiter's in Cancer, moon is in Sagittarius. I don't think it's really right to keep calling Jupiter exalted. The exaltation degree of Jupiter is 5 degrees of Cancer. It's so far away. It's almost an entire Russia away. But it is the exaltation sign. And it does bring about hope, optimism, because it's in Cancer. But it also definitely can bring about fanaticism and all kinds of difficult things that we've seen for a lot of the transit of Jupiter through Cancer. However, we've also noticed this last week how much grace can be flowing when Jupiter and Venus come together, especially around the Sattvic intention, because Jupiter is a Sattvic planet and it's in a Sattvic sign. So those qualities of Sattva, which are about goodness, righteousness, and high-minded virtues, we've seen really unravel and untangle and get strong. You know, I should say we've seen a lot of the sort of diabolical tendencies, especially around human rights, women's rights in particular, couples' rights, gay rights. You know, we saw the gay marriage bill pass here in the U.S. Also, one of the biggest changes globally was the outlawing of women's genital mutilation in Nigeria. This is huge stuff that's really groundbreaking in the world, and other things that have been upheld in the sake of human rights. So we've seen this with Jupiter-Venus come together. And so, you know, what's going to happen in the sky also is Jupiter and Venus are going to like be right on top of each other on July 1st, July 2nd. They'll be right on top of each other. So that's a beautiful configuration in the sky, and we may see another sort of watershed, graceful event happen. For the most part, though, the full moons bring into contrast the quality of the sun sign and bring about a kind of dynamism. So it's still a full moon in Sagittarius, which is the mind. You know, the moon is the emotional mind, but the sun is still in Gemini, which means that we're in the Gemini cycle, which is about using our discrimination. Gemini is about flexibility, intelligence, you know, being light and challenging our teachings. This is actually what Gemini is about. It's about not being fanatical. It's about using our discrimination and our intellect to make sure that our teachings make sense to us. Because if our teachings make sense, or when our teachings don't make sense to us and we can't explain them and we don't understand them, they don't really help us very much. They just wind up being blind beliefs, blind faith. And blind faith often turns us into hypocrites. Because if we don't really know how our beliefs work, then we wind up just proselytizing about them and preaching them, but not practicing them. Then when it comes time to actually put into practice, we fall back on what we know works. So this is what Gemini is about anyway. It's the Gemini transit that we're working on right now with the sun going through Gemini. So this full moon is to harmonize that energy. Keep that in mind. It's a full moon means that our mind is full of this Jupiterian, Sagittarian expansion and faith. But it's in contrast to the Gemini, which has been having us seek literal answers. So the last couple weeks, we've been looking for answers and maybe challenging our teachers, challenging our gurus, looking for things to make sense, making adjustments to things that don't make sense. Hence, even some of the recent, like the recent Supreme Court verdict here in the United States, and things like that. So this full moon is actually opposite. It's in contrast to the Gemini intellect and intelligence and brings more faith into the picture. So it's also to harmonize that idea that, we're not here to just try to intellectually conquer the universe. There's only so much we can know through our information and data gathering. That data and information needs to be connected with a higher purpose. Because we also have a lot of what I call the illusion of knowledge and the illusion of information, especially astrology students. You're all great at that. No, this idea that gathering a lot of information is somehow gathering wisdom. Like for instance, astrology students who just learn how to identify all these things and they don't really know what they mean, except, well, I think that's you have a debilitated planet. Okay, so identifying that and not even really, and saying, well, that's a bad thing. And this, well, that's a good thing. Nichabanga. Well, it's debilitated, but I know that its ruler is here, so it's Nichabanga. Like that information in itself is important. It's not important unless you can interpret it, unless you know what it means. Wisdom comes from application, not just identifying things. Like I say, memorization is not mastery. Memorizing details is not a mastery over them. So this is a whole issue that we've also been working on the last couple of weeks, because the sun is in Gemini. Mars being there as well brings this kind of strong opinions about things that we need to be careful being boxed into strong opinions about those things as well, fighting for our opinions. And again, we're seeing a lot of this fighting for our opinions and the explosive quality of Mars being combust and join the sun as well, like in that sort of, like that Charleston massacre that happened, which is terrible, and even like that prison break story. I'm talking about some U.S. news here, but also, the outrage that came after the Charleston situation over the Confederate flag, and these kind of opposing forces, these ideas that we're battling over, the court battling over gay rights. And again, you're seeing these battles are going on with Sun and Mars and Gemini over ideas, but there's Jupiter-Venus together, so grace is prevailing because these two gurus are joined. And so this is one thing that the Jupiter-Venus brings. And there's been some talk about the fact that they're going to get close and it'll be a planetary war, that's what it's called when planets get within 1 degree of each other. This kind of planetary war between when these planets are in a natal chart, and in fact, even when they're not in a natal chart, even in the sky, they bring together a certain conflict between, desires in the moment, which is Venus, and the bigger picture and things that are more universal, which are Jupiter. So, we have our higher principles that, like, let's say, our religion or our beliefs and our philosophies, but then we get pulled down into the world through the senses and pleasure. So, just like we have a relationship but our partner is not so spiritual, this is a typical Venus-Jupiter conflict on one level, those kinds of things. So, you see these issues come together when the planets join. And again, you're seeing this play out even in the courts and stuff. You have one side that says, religion and teachings say marriage should only be between a man and a woman, but justice and humanity would say, yeah, but everybody should be created equal. They're not hurting anybody by doing that. And God, let's say the sanctity of marriage, heterosexual marriage has done enough to destroy the sanctity of marriage. They don't need, it was one of the things about being opposed to gay marriage is it's going to destroy the sanctity of marriage. Look at the divorce rates among straight couples. I don't know if gay couples could do much more to destroy the sanctity of marriage. Heterosexual couples are doing a good enough job already. So there's a point where the conflict is there. You still have the religious people or the people who would fall back on some kind of tradition and principle and philosophy, which is Jupiter, and those who would say we need to honor what's just naturally right for everyone, which is Venus. So you're seeing these issues play out. I don't make too much of the planetary war between these two. I don't think it's going to be this conflict any more than it has been with the two planets joined. And again, the planetary war changes pretty quickly. It'll only be a couple of days. But, they're both the teachers as well. Because they're both teachers, we're actually seeing how when these great teachers come together, especially in a sattvic sign, how it's bringing a lot of grace. So, I hope this was helpful. If you want to see how this is going to influence your sign, you can join my member site, because I do a assessment of this full moon for all 12 signs, including yours. It's important to know that this full moon in Sagittarius, like if you're a Cancer person, it falls in your 6th house. It's very different than if you're a Virgo and it's in your 4th house, or you're a Capricorn and it's in your 12th house. So, if you're not a member and you want to, you can join for only 1 penny, and you get access to that and 2 weeks of daily forecasts. You can cancel at any time, but if you want to stay a member, there's a small fee. It's about $1 a day to keep getting forecasts if you want. It's there. You could look at a link on this page if you're interested in that. Either way, I hope you have a great week, month, whatever. And this full moon in Sagittarius should be, you know, a blessed time in our heart, but it could be kind of an explosive time with all those planets in Ardra, especially Sun, Mars in Ardra. It's a pretty volatile axis, so take care.